there's so much energy in here. It's like
it is.
It's like, who am I feeling? It's like there's so many of them. It's like hard to pick out like one in particular. So it's like, who am I feeling?
This, I'm telling you, the entire hotel is like that to me. They're just everywhere.
They're everywhere, but it's one of those, like, it's like in this one, when I first walked in, I could feel everybody like trying to get my attention all at the same time. So it's kind of like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then back over here, there's even more. To me, it's one of a bunch of kids, but it's like they're at a distance. These are like right everywhere, like right on me. So it's like,
this side probably doesn't. They don't probably get as much attention on this side.
They probably don't. It's like they're like trying to get my attention.
Although we can't go to the kitchen, I want to show y'all. The kitchen, I'm going to tell you, it is creepy as all get out. I mean, it goes on, and the farther you go back, you feel it, the energy back there. It's one of those very territorial. Security guards at both properties would say that all night long, it sounds like somebody's in there cooking up a storm. Both properties. None of them wanted to go into the kitchen. But Galveston was full of nuns. We had St. Mary's Infirmary over on Harborside. The quarantine stations that we had, most of those were ran by nuns. We had Ursuline Academy right back on Avenue U, which survived the 1900 storm. It was across from our Walmart. And it was the home of St. Mary's Orphan Asylum, like Ruth mentioned. They knew very early on that it wasn't your typical storm. They didn't know what was going to happen, but they knew something definitely was going to happen. There were some reports that the water had actually receded up to a half a mile from the shoreline. And they put the babies to bed just a little bit earlier, and I think, so they wouldn't be as frightened, because you know the mom and dads were just as frightened as those children. But I think they put them to bed, and that's why we're capturing so many in the white, you know, because they passed during their sleep. So like I said, Sister Mary Catherine was the head nun here. It was ran by the Sisters of Charity Catholic Orphanage. Most of the people here, most of the children here, there was a total of 93 children and 10 nuns. Most of the children became orphans because of the yellow fever epidemic here in Galveston at that time.
I can feel it when people pass from that. I can feel it.
Oh, can you?
But it's almost like passing from the flu, so you have like a lot of like moisture in your lungs too.
Yes.
But they called it yellow fever because when you coughed it out, it was like all the mucus was
yellow.
all yellowish, like that deep yellow color. So it's like almost like having the flu where you're trying to like cough it out, but when you did, it was like a lot of mucus, like yellowy orange kind of mucus. So and it never stopped. Like as much as you coughed out, there was always more.
Okay. Now one thing that is different about the children and the nuns, they were actually buried where they were found, which is different than, you know, with all the other bodies that were here, but they were actually buried where they were found. I mean, it's not, you know, we're not one to say that maybe perhaps, you know, the nun and the children were buried very near where the Galvez is now, or they just made their way here. Maybe she is here because she has a job to do. There's still many children on that end, and, you know, she does watch over them. I have been told that they do mind her, but they do fear her. And I was also told, a medium, that there are also 2 Indian braves here watching over the children and making sure that the nun does not hurt them in any way. And he says, I don't have to work it back there. He says, you know, back when the bride and groom are by the bay window, you know how they're curved? He says, because of your nun? I'm like, my nun? What, you know, I said, what do you mean? And he says, she will get literally the entire evening, she is in the groom's face like this, just staring him down. And
yeah, that's what I'm, like, she's disappointed, judgmental.
Well, I was told that because she knows what's happening that night, on their wedding night. Oh, those pearls. This ain't for those pearl clutchers. So, but, and he said because she tried to do it to me. One night she got right in my face And I don't know where the Indians came from, you know, in the hotel, but every once in a while they pop up. We had one on the 5th floor. Our housekeeper walked in, our houseman walked in, and he walked straight into a pirate. And then we had another one that walked into, on this end, that walked into, and it was an Indian. We have one photo at the very end of the hallway that there is a figure that does have, and I think it was you. It might have been you that told me it was a chief, and he's holding his staff.
Yeah.
So the Indians that we had here in Galveston were the Karankawas. And they were cannibalistic, but most were back at the time. They didn't just consume flesh just for the fun of it. It was done ritually. And the very unusual thing about them, they were freakishly tall, between 6.5 foot and 7.5 foot tall. So, and I'll show you this. This happened to me up on the 7th floor in the MacArthur boardroom. This was the middle photo of 3 photos. I promise you, I did not wake up that morning and say, I want to look like Gene Simmons or Tony the Tiger. So the energy up there is a little different, like in a big, big way.
Is it your face that changed?
Yeah, you see? And I showed this to a friend of mine. He says, Melissa, that's Native American. He specialized in the Karankawas. He was an archaeologist. And he says, do you have Native American blood in you? I said, I do. He says, I feel it as some sort of protection. So guys, we didn't get to finish 501. I got to show you the other ghost. There was 32 of us in the room. Now you got to imagine the room is 300 square foot. Yeah. And there was, like I said, 32 of us in that room. So I was way overbooked, and there was a gentleman taking photos in the bathroom. And all of a sudden I hear, and it stopped me mid-sentence, and I looked over. I said, what is it? Well, the woman saw what he was photographing. She grabbed his phone, enlarged it. We all gasped. We all looked around the room. I promise you there was not one soldier in there with us. You see the epaulette on that shoulder, the high collar of that uniform jacket. Do y'all see what looks to be like war paint? Maybe a mohawk? Do y'all see that? Mm-hmm. What do y'all see?
No, it's a helmet that has the ruff on it.
I thought that too at first, and then as I researched a lot of the military ships, it does. A lot of the military ships, when they would sail and land in North America, not just Galveston, they thought if they resembled the natives, they would be accepted by the natives. That was my story, and I stuck to it for a year. Until I had a soldier on my tour. He could care less about the tour. He was just there with his family. He said, Melissa, can I borrow your tablet? And I'm like, okay. I'm handing it to him. He points out very clearly, that's the shoulder of another soldier. That's the pin on his collar. That's the side of his neck, the front of his throat. As soon as he said that, I could make out the bill to this one's hat, and then I could see the pins on his hat. I mean, everything came together when he said that. One of your guys said there was a portal in there. I remember he walked straight to the bathroom. Do you remember that?
Andy.
Yes. I remember, yes. I remember they had there was
Our Andy.
There was a nautilus shell, and he walked in that room and went straight to it, and he said, there's a portal right there. And he pointed to a nautilus shell photo that's cut in half. Yeah. And he says it's right here. And is it because we put more ghost hunters there, or is there actually more activity there?
But if you have a portal, it's a two-way door. So it's kind of they come and go.
Right. And that's what I feel in there.
Like it's always.
Yeah, you know, my friend Kathy.
It's like the door in the front. It's like
yes, a revolving door. Okay, so that makes sense. My friend Kathy, she says, Melissa, when she stayed there, she says, it's like a regular highway. They're just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
I wanted to ask you about the nun. I don't know if you had any more information on her. Did you feel anything from her?
I haven't yet, but we're about to go to that area.
Okay.
So we're about to go to where that area where the nun is. That's what she's asking about. So yeah, there's several ghosts in that area. This room more than anything else, I just feel a lot of people being in there. And then when she said it was a nightclub, that made more sense. Like, because there's so many people in that area.
Okay. So where are we going next?
Where are we going, Melissa? All the way down to the end?
We are going in a roundabout way. We're going to get to the other end of the hotel closest to the music hall. That's where the wedding is tonight, so we're not going to be able to go to the music hall, but we're going to be right there in the vicinity of the music hall, and it's right down by the spa.
Is this one of the more active spots?
It is. It's very active. It's part of that. It's that end where a lot of the children, the nun likes to hang out through there. We have, well, there's quite a few that hang out. I know of at least 4 offhand that have been spotted throughout the years.
We were in this room earlier, and I felt energy in the back space there. So can anybody pick up any information from that ghost that's there? You feeling it?
It feels very intense. Almost like it wants to talk to me. It kind of feels helpless a little bit. Kind of like anxious maybe. It's like, look at me, look at me. That's kind of like what I get.
He does now, but when he passed, he didn't want to be seen. So he was killed on the property. Do you get any reason like why he was killed? There was something that was seen, but it wasn't seen by him, it was seen by someone else. So what I got from him is prior to him passing, he's playing cards. So I can feel like the cards being dealt out. I can see him like picking up the cards, like looking at them, like several times, like, you know, should I bet on this hand? You know what I'm saying? Like, should I bet on this hand? Should I not bet on this hand? And he moved someone else's cards, and he actually palmed a card out. And he was shot for cheating. He was trying to get money, like, and trying to like get it fast. So it's one of those. The weird part is like when he was shot, like they brought him down, like one of the service elevators, and hid his body back here for 24 hours before anybody was called. But I also got a year with him.
Yeah, with him?
I got a year when he passed. Anybody get a year?
37.
I get 1929.
They were gambling here in the hotel? Were they gambling down here?
They're not gambling on this floor, but they're not too, you know what I'm saying? Like they're probably on the 3rd or 4th, you know what I'm saying? Like they're not at the very top. They're probably like the 2nd or 3rd floor in that area. Anybody get why he's trying to get money?
It's getting like a female, like I just,
Yeah, me too.
I keep hearing
Like there's a woman involved and
Uh-huh.
he needs to get her out of town.
Why does he need money?
Can you get her out of town?
How is he going to get her out of town? On a ship. He's trying to get passage for them, but he has to have money for them to get on the ship. But he likes that they put everything in the way because he didn't want to be like, you know what I'm saying? Like once he was killed, he was like almost afraid like they're going to come back and hurt me again. You know, almost that energy. So I feel like he likes when things are like all piled up in the back. Because I feel him on the bottom shelf, like in the far back.
There's probably about 5 of us here. There was no AC at the time. It was hot as Hades. So they told me to sit down. I'm sitting down. I'm actually sitting in the wheelchair that you're sitting in. We had it right back here. And then my friend Eugene said, Melissa, close your eyes. He says, and pretend that you're giving Robert a hug. So I closed my eyes and I just pretend I was giving this little boy Robert a hug. And then all of a sudden, you know, we had the SLS camera. Y'all know what those are. with the stick figures. So you can see, I lightened it up, but you can see right here there's something over my shoulder. Like I said, when we were investigating, I mean, it was hot as anything, but as soon as I stood up, I said, guys, I'm not feeling anything. And then I stood up, and I'm like, oh, I said, there is something right here. Something is right here beside me. And then I could feel it moving up, and they're like, oh, we got it on the camera.
Awesome.
And this is what the photo that was taken by one of the ladies that was in here. You can see it coming up through here, over the front of me right through here, and then back over here. Now my face is completely distorted, but if you look, you can see a bottom jaw.
Oh, yeah. Looks like a hug almost.
Yeah,
I'm like, did I get a ghost hug?
That's what it looks like.
So there is a gentleman who was first captured. The 4 ladies attended my ghost touring dinner before heading up to dinner. They came down and took a selfie in our haunted bathrooms. Back then we had a mirror. The mirror is going back up, but we've remodeled since then. This is who they captured. Let's just say they were waiting on me the very next morning. They said, Melissa, there's no way that he would be there. The only way that he would be there is if he was in front of us. And I'm looking, and I said, oh. I said, no, ma'am. I said, you see this right here? I said, you see he's leaning against this? I said, you see this right here? I said, he's actually leaning right next to you, looking at you in the same mirror that you're looking at yourself in. Mr. Bobby, our late guest ambassador, as soon as I showed him the photo, this was my first real photo to capture during one of my tours, or, you know, that connected to my tour, and he says, Miss Melissa, I think I know him. And he started here at 14, passed away at 84. I said, what did he do, Bobby? And he said, a little bit of everything, kind of like me and you. And then we got to talking about something else, and he had his job. He did the historical tours, you know, so he was busy doing his stuff, and I forgot about what he said. And then because of this photo, I shared it with one of my guests, and they went on a ghost tour downtown, and Alicia, who worked at the time with Dash Beardsley, this is Alicia, she was married in the music hall in 2009. In 2009. This is the original photo. You recognize the shape of that head?
Oh my God.
He's right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
Baldy.
It looks like he's watching.
But that's his job, is to make sure that he's like right there to take care of whatever you needed.
Do you see where you're standing? In front of the painting of Bernardo. That painting used to sit right down here by the music hall. Got the 2 photos, and I continued doing tours. People started calling him Tom, for Peeping Tom, because he was in the ladies' restroom. Was it you that told me? Do you want to share the rest? Do you remember that? Go for it. All right. So I thought it was you with your group. And she said, Melissa, he worked here. And I'm like, yes, he did, because I went back and talked to Mr. Bobby. And she says, when he worked here, these were not the bathrooms. These were the executive offices. This is where he would come cool off. I know this because I go to the music hall to cool off. But you said these were executive offices. Nobody would have known that these were executive offices. So the bell closet right here, we had 2 executive offices still there up until we did the renovation. We just now made that into a bell closet. So they were still executive offices. So you pegged it on that one. So I reached out to an older Facebook page. That's a bright flash.
I know it is.
And I asked, I said, does anybody know if this gentleman, I gave his name, worked at the Grand Galvez, and Kathleen Mack, a very dear friend of mine who wrote so many books, The Ghost of Galveston, Broadway Cemeteries, The History of the Grand Galvez. She says, Melissa, he did. He worked there from 1964 to 1976. He also worked at the old Galveston Club, which is where our lobby bar that we used to have came from. It was Galveston's last speakeasy. It is now in our music hall. So he also worked at the Galveston Country Club, and he worked at the Artillery Club. I have his census records. Now, I don't know how he died, but I have his census records. And he literally grew up within a mile or 2 of the Grand Galvez. So as we were finding all this out, a family member reached out to the hotel, and it says, I am looking for photos of my late caretaker's husband. His name was, and everybody that's an admit on there, they're like, who is he? Who is it? You know, it's like, did you see what they're asking? And I'm like, I see. I said, but what do I say? I mean, like, and by then somebody had answered. Unfortunately, we don't have photos. But so that's where we found out who he was. He is now buried in the same cemetery. Both him and Mr. Bobby are buried in the same cemetery. I'm not sure if it was you that told me that he likes to follow me around because we kind of have the same level of customer service. Did you tell me we'll never get a clear photo of his face because he's ashamed of something? And I'm not. Oh, does he have a scar? Okay. I did my last medium tour. I have, the way that I do those, the students, they come and they just spit out what they're feeling, sensing, seeing, hearing, whatever. And then one of them, we were down here, and then one of them just kept going, I keep seeing a book. Somebody's writing a book. She said, book. And she couldn't get it out of her head. She looked at me, she says, Melissa, are you writing a book? I said, well, I plan on it. And then that's when the medium says, Melissa. She says, not only, she said, this is what she told me, I don't know if it's true. She says, not only are you a healer, you're also a channeler. She says, it would not surprise me that he doesn't follow you home. He says, he's going to help you write that book. And she says, yeah. And it was so funny because when I first moved 6 months ago, the first 2 weeks I was there, anything that had to do with light, lamps, electronic candles, they would come on. And it happened for like 2 weeks straight. And it was calming to me. I felt like it was a welcome home and that they were lighting my path. That's what I felt in my heart. So I don't know if it was him. I don't know if
it was him. And I feel like part of the injury or the scar on his face affected his eyesight, so he always wanted the lights on. Like, the brighter the lights, the easier it is for me to see.
Okay.
So he, you know what I'm saying, and that was part of like being at service, is that he wanted to make sure that, you know what I'm saying, like you can see your way, you're not trying to, you know what I'm saying, like stumble over something.
This is why we take selfies in the elevator. 8 of us got on, 8 of us got off. He did not. Same gentleman.
Oh, yeah.
He's in the elevator with us. That's one of my favorites. I love that. And you see he's in the lobby. So this, we did pull the security footage, and it showed only us getting on, only us getting off. It did not show him. So the music hall, I wish I could show y'all that photo over there. All right, guys. So this is when I had the first overnight paranormal investigation at the Galvez. We separated into 4 groups, PowerPoint on, just left the light on for ambiance. So a friend of mine stuck her hand through the door, said click, 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 3 photos. That's my podium. I was wearing a dress that evening, but it didn't come down to the floor, and I wasn't wearing a hat. Do y'all see a cat?
Yes.
And there's also a soldier right over here. He's a short little fat thing. He's kind of like about my size. So that was before they had height and weight requirements. So, but he has been spotted many, many, many times, always back in that far left-hand corner, so much that I actually thought he was just residual. And then this is the second photo. They changed my PowerPoint. I couldn't even do that. So she turned, the soldier, can you see him right here? And then the cat's still there.
Yes.
Like I said, you can see him a little bit better. Now he is wearing a red coat. He's got the bandoliers that crisscross across his chest. He's wearing a round campaign hat. And like I said, I always thought he was back there guarding the colors because he has a flag.
Back in that area.
Back there, yes. So, and then this is the third, that's the first photo. Third photo. She turned again. The cat's gone, but you can see the soldier very well. You see him right here?
Oh, yes.
So that live animation, when you hit it, you can see him turn and start marching back to that flag.
And she saw something she wasn't supposed to. But when she makes a comment, kind of where Iris is right now, and when she gets down here, he shoves her in the corner and has his hand around her neck and says, "Don't say anything."